take a look at this image from Charlie Chaplin's The Great Dictator. We see a man in a dictator's uniform dancing alone with a balloon shaped like the world. It might be the most perfect piece of political filmmaking ever made. This isn't because of what it says. It's because of what it does. Over the past few weeks, we've been building a way of looking at films as machines. In other words, thinking about them as technical systems, which are supposed to produce specific human effects. We've watched a factory gate open. We've watched a city designed to encode power in stone and steel. This week, we go a bit smaller. We'll be focusing on the human body, and more specifically, we'll be looking at one of the most precisely controlled bodies in the history of cinema. Now, Charlie Chaplin, the star and director of this movie, was not just an actor. He was more like an engineer of physical performance. Every stumble he makes, every pause he takes, every slight raising of his eyebrow was calculated to produce a precise response in his audience. He understood that the body itself is a kind of medium of expression, and how that body moves within a film tells an audience what to feel about it. The Great Dictator, released in 1940, gives Chaplin two different bodies to work with. He plays both the dictator Hinkle, who's a barely disguised parody of Hitler, and a Jewish barber who gets mistaken for Hinkle. These two characters have the same face, but completely opposite souls. What is Chaplin trying to say here? Well, one way to think about it is that he's showing you that the difference between a tyrant and an ordinary person is not merely biological. The two characters in this film have essentially the same body. Instead, the difference between the dictator and the ordinary person is something which is performed. Something which is manufactured through discipline, through costume, through the synchronized bodies of crowds, and through the technical apparatus of propaganda. In Chaplin's view, Nazism can be understood as something like an industrial process applied to human beings. Now, what I want you to do is pay very careful attention to two important sequences within the film. The first sequence shows Hinkle dancing with the globe. Watch the rhythm of this performance. Pay careful attention to how Chaplin's body relates to the object. The lightness of his movements, the control he has, the almost ballet-like grace. And then watch what happens when the globe pops. Something in the scene suddenly shifts. The fantasy of perfect control meets the stubbornness of physical reality. It's a funny scene, but there's more to it than just humor. Now let's look at the second sequence. Here we see the Jewish barber shaving a customer in time to a song by the composer Brahms. The barber's razor moves in perfect synchronization with the music. His whole body is attuned to an external rhythm. Both Hinkle and the barber's bodies are synchronized to something outside of themselves. Both can be thought of as being disciplined. But one synchronization feels coerced, while the other seems absorbed, maybe even joyful. We can think about that difference as being the whole point of this film, compressed into two sequences. One other thing I want to bring into conversation with this film is a thinker whose work maps very interestingly on what we've been describing so far. The French philosopher Gilles Deleuze wrote in 1992 about a distinction between two different kinds of society, two different ways that power organizes and affects human beings. The first Deleuze called the disciplinary society. He spoke about power working through enclosed institutions, places like factories, barracks, schools, enclosed spaces that take people in, subject them to a fixed discipline, shape them, and then release them. These spaces operated like molds for the human soul. You would be pressed inside the factory for 8 hours, and then you would be outside of it. Each of these institutions has walls, and the walls are the limit, dividing line between the space where power is exercised and the space where it is, at least temporarily, let off. The second kind of society he called the control society. In this place, power works not through enclosures, but through continuous modulation. Here, power has no fixed form, no clear inside and outside, and no moment of release. Instead, there's just constant adjustment, constant tracking, and constant variation. You're not off the hook when the factory whistle sounds or the school bell rings. Instead, you're stuck inside a network of power that never lets go of you. Now, let's turn back to the movie and think about it through that lens. We can understand Hinckel's Nazism through this sort of perspective. His rallies, his uniforms, the synchronized salute, all of these can be thought of as disciplinary mechanisms. The body is taken in, molded to a specific form, and then deployed. Chaplin's comedy is the image of exactly the kind of thing that disciplinary power can never quite eliminate. A body that doesn't really fit the mold. He stumbles when he marches. He improvises. Deleuze's darker point, and one that the course will come back to, is that control societies which are more like the ones we live in the 21st century, don't produce the same kind of resistance because they don't really have walls to push against in the same way. We'll return to this concept later. In 1940, it's this enclosed expression of power which is still very much the top concern. And it's something that Chaplain understood precisely.